As we gather this day and before we move into the gospel preaching of the gospel text, what I would invite us to do is to take a moment to hear and allow these words from Romans to wash over us, of this Spirit who intercedes in prayer for us, with sighs too deep for words. I know that over the course of the last week, some who are gathered have lost dear friends or parents of friends. I know that others have been caught up in the government shutdown here in Minnesota, and others are just heart-wrenched and broken over what is happening nationally. Additionally, as we receive the news from Norway, I know that there has been heartbreak, hurt, and frustration. So today, let us gather our hearts in a spirit of prayer and allow the Spirit to wash over us. We pray. Gracious, holy God, you come among us, calling us to new life. In the midst of the brokenness in our lives, and the hurts and the woundedness of our world, come again. Stir our hearts that we may be your people, that we may live in new ways and proclaim a gospel of love and life that transcends the brokenness, the hurt, and the anger. And when our words fail us, when our grief is too much, our longing too deep, may your Spirit truly intercede with sighs too deep for words. We turn all of the worries, the concerns of our lives and of our days over to you, trusting in this Jesus, our teacher and our healer. Amen. As we gather this day, with all that has happened in the world, I would like to step back and invite you on our journey. The journey that Bill and Torn and I took here just a couple weeks ago. You see, we traveled from the lakes of Minnesota down Interstate 94, crossing with the new electric poles up and the outlet malls, as well as the beautiful wildflowers across the interstate. And then we got into Wisconsin. And there in Wisconsin, there were some rock towers along the interstate, beautiful trees taking shape, much traffic as we rushed past the Wisconsin Dells, and then into Chicago, this big city, bustling, things hurrying, traffic going well over the speed limit. And then into Indiana, flat. Lots of corn, a little bit of wheat, but we happened to be traveling on the 4th of July, and so as the sun was setting, fireworks exploding across the sky as far as the eye could see. Beautiful. Then quickly on to Kentucky, and then in eastern Kentucky and northern Tennessee, green as far as the eye could see in these rolling hills and mountains. Now, on my first trek to Tennessee, I was astonished at how green it was. And then on a closer look, I saw that there was this plant that just seemed to be a carpet everywhere. The locals call it kudzu. This kudzu, which was brought over from Japan to help with erosion, a very real problem, here was overtaking everything. Now, it made for a beautiful sight in many ways, but it was changing or killing off the things below it. It has become a weed, an invasive species. We're not used to thinking of weeds as beautiful, We're not used to thinking of weeds as things that we would aspire to. But here today, in this first parable, what do we get? A weed. Pretty at that, with beautiful orangish yellow flowers growing up in the fields, but a weed. And yet Jesus says to us that this realm, this reign of God, is like that weed being planted, that grows into a shrub and then the greatest of trees. Now, if you are like me and perhaps a farm boy or have some background in agriculture or plants, you might be scratching your head. As we know that a mustard seed doesn't become much of a shrub at all, and certainly does not become the greatest of trees in which birds are going to make their nests. Now, more modern biblical scholars have wrestled with this text and have invited us to think in new ways. That perhaps the greatness about this seed is not truly about this shrub or this tree, but the fact that this little seed is invasive. That this little seed that grows into a plant is going to spread like wildfire. It is going to be the kudzu of Israel and Palestine, and ideally of the whole world. That is what Jesus is talking about. That there is going to be this realm, this reign of God that is truly invasive. And it doesn't leave things the way it is. It's going to grow and change and expand people's vision the way that we look at the world. Which moves very quickly into the second parable. You see, today we are in this very rapid succession of Jesus wanting to teach people. And so all of a sudden we are into the yeast. And this woman who dumps the yeast into the flour, and all of a sudden we have this expanding bread. It doesn't stay the way it was. These little invasive things, like the mustard seed and like the yeast, are going to grow and change the whole chemistry, the whole way that we look at what something is, the whole way we experience who we are. Which continues to then call us into craziness, some might say. Yes, the kids creating their own parable about the bird's nest and the kid climbing the tree sounds silly and far-fetched, but imagine hearing stories about these men, supposedly quite astute, well-respected, having created their business and their life for themselves, finding treasures. One, perhaps along the side of a road or in a plot of land, burying it so he can come back and buy the land. Another, a merchant, in search of great pearls, finds one of such incredible value that he takes and sells everything that he has for that one pearl. I believe that these challenge us. When the seeds of the realm of God are planted in us, what is our commitment? What are we called to do to give up? That we might live more deeply, more fully with this pearl, this treasure.